time for a major monthly update. How have things changed? What is going on? And what does this mean for the next few months to come as we get into this major September open here, which is going to really derive the next few months of price action. This is probably going to be a very hated video, as these typically are, but it is what it is. I'm just the messenger in this regard. I just want to be relaying the information, and you can deduce whatever you want from this, and just it is what it is. It is what it is. At the end of the day, I should let you also know that, today is September 1st, meaning that we have a major sale going on as of right now with 20% off of any one of the programs or services that you see on the Teachable School here, which is in the link in the description below. And we'll actually even give 80% off on the Krown automation service right here for the first month. And with all this, you just need the code BDAY at checkout in all capitals, exactly like this, like literally just like that. And then yes, you can try that out for about $30 for the first month. And everything else is 20% off. So sweet. All right, cool. Where do we start on this video? This is a big one, as it is, as are typically all monthly videos. And I suppose the first thing that I'd like to start off with is something that is right in front of our faces, which is this nice red horizontal line right here. Bitcoin, even for the line drawers right now, has closed below the last major sort of, relevant, I guess you want to call this support in this case, because Bitcoin was holding up above it for the last 5 months. Bitcoin now getting its first closure below $60,000 in 5 months, which you could even argue is perhaps a reasonable psychological number right there. Fair enough. Anyways, I'd like to get into some more relevant things in my opinion, and that would be the red 5 exponential moving average right here, which has caused such a stir between people. It's very hilarious. I haven't really wanted to respond too much to that just because it is silly. But at the end of the day, Bitcoin did get its first closure below it, and that is a major warning signal. All major trends begin with a break above or below this major moving average. That is just a fucking fact. And in this case, you can see Bitcoin has gotten its first closure below there since basically 1 year ago in October, or actually it was August of last year where it got the closure below. And so, that is another warning signal. On top of that, we do see that the accumulation distribution indicator is getting a new open into September, and it is continuing with the downward slope. So now we have 2 months of downward slope. I mean, of course, September is not over just yet, but opening on a downward slope is not necessarily like the best sign. And anytime that we have seen 2 consecutive downward slopes, that has been like a long-term downtrend. The last time we saw this was back over here in August of 2021. Yes, indeed, this one did trade a little bit higher from that moment, but on a closing basis, things were more or less done for that cycle. And as you can see, shorting into that strength would have been a phenomenally good do overall. Moving on from there, we have this iteration actually over here from March of 2018. Again, 2 downward slopes. The next half year was basically sideways and down. Pretty nasty right there. Hopefully that is not happening in this particular case. Same thing back on over here, and so on and so forth. So there are major warning signals here that Bitcoin can pull back further. And I do want to, before we go on further, before people start typing comments and just saying like, hey, fuck you, man. Are you talking about downside? Fuck you. Fuck you. It's like, that's really what it feels like a lot of the time. I understand that, Bitcoin could play out like a corrective period, continuing with some sideways and downside price action. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to enter into a full-on bear market. I think that is actually rather unlikely as of this moment. And we'll talk about, what if happened around end of this month would put the green light back on again. But in this case, we have 2 strikes now, so not great, or actually 3 strikes. I mean, if you're looking at the lines as well, so all of those kind of working together. And I need to bring back my notes up over here and into the next chart we go, and that would be our monthly stochastic momentum, which is going to continue to the downside. The pivot has reduced quite significantly. Before it was, I think, somewhere around 70 or 71,000 bucks. It is now at 65,000 and change, and it is coming back down below that critical zone, which, historically speaking, has actually not been the worst thing. In only one instance was that the end of that cycle. But yes, this would actually be an insight as to the first condition that I'd like to see if Bitcoin Bitcoin is going to turn the green light back on again, which would be closing this next month, September, above 65,000 bucks. If you see that, yeah, that would be a really, really good start. Obviously, that would bring Bitcoin back above that 5 exponential moving average, on the monthly time frame as well. And, generally just be looking sideways enough from there. And, that just is what it is if that were to happen. But as of right now, Bitcoin is trading about 7,000 bucks below that pivot, with only 30 days left to go in this month, as it literally just began. So as of right now, going to be, again, on the downside right there. On top of that, if we go over here and we bring up our monthly Joule indicator, we can see a couple things. So I want to point out, one, that the monthly Joule did get into or around the critical zone right here. Oh Jesus, I have this chart all fucked up. Okay, let's do this exactly for the monthly. And did turn white, and actually even got a couple consecutive blue downwards momentum closures right here. That's downwards momentum and volatility, actually. And anytime that we've seen this happen in the past from around this region, I mean, I'll just mark them off and kind of show you on the board what these have correlated towards. But I guess this one over here is not too concerning. But then again, you could argue that this was like a little bit too young in Bitcoin's life. And this one over here certainly was concerning. But the other couple, marking around the end of the cycle, actually. Again, I don't think that Bitcoin cycle is ending right here, to be honest with you. I don't think that it is. I think that it could be a much more prolonged sideways period with maybe some downside in the short term. And then, and then maybe we see Bitcoin actually truly decouple. It is doing something weird here. That's what it feels like to me. But yeah, this again would be more on the concerning side, of course. Moving on from there, I do want to get into, of course, where is it? Let me just find this. The September statistics, which we went over in yesterday's video. So, if I'm going to be creating a picture here of kind of what September could look like, first, we should be aware that September, it is more likely to close negatively than positively, just historically speaking. Only 5 out of 14 Septembers have closed positively here. And for the positive closing Septembers, it's actually had, some pretty minimal gains, about 7%, which is small for Bitcoin. For anything else, it'd be absolutely massive. On the losing side, losing an average of almost 13%. But moving on from there, it does really seem that when we actually dial into the data, that most of the downwards pressure in September is done in the first couple weeks, actually. In fact, we did a little study over here and found that the September low was put in on average around 14 to 15 days into the month, with a lot of these, as you can see, coming in like the first week and a half, let's say. So, I would be aware of that. Basically, Bitcoin kind of a little bit more, concerning here for these next couple weeks, basically going into, in my opinion, the quad witching, which is going to be the third week of this month. It's going to be kind of fraught with peril. And if there is going to be downside, we would expect it to happen during that time. And that also means that if we do not see any downside continuation between now and, let's say, like the 19th or 20th of September, which is actually my fight date, which I'm really excited about. But that's another topic for another video. Then I'd look at that as a good signal, obviously. If Bitcoin does fail to continue to any new lows between now and that date, that would really be the time for that to be happening, statistically speaking, again. And then the second half, or like the last week and a half of September, are typically positive or positive gaining. 8 out of 13 of those have put in positive gains. The reason why I don't have 14 is because one of them was like super early on in Bitcoin's history, and it just like we don't even have data on it. It's like 6 cent open, 6 cent close. What do I do with that? Don't fucking know. So yeah. Anyways, that is another thing that I want to be aware of right here. Like, if Bitcoin is going to continue to the downside, we expect it to happen sooner rather than later. And if it does not happen by around that sort of midpoint of September, I would look at that as a more bullish sign than not. Here's also another concerning thing for the weekly. Today is going to be the weekly closure for spot price action, and it will actually have a chance to close below that last higher low that we saw in late July, thus negating that as a higher low, continuing on with the lower high structure here, which we have 1, 2, 3, and perhaps working on number 4. And well, then you have trend on your weekly, and you have all these monthly indications that we just looked at. And again, I'm just going to have to be biased towards some sort of downside price action. We'll talk about like worst case scenario at the very end of this video. I don't want to scare you with that or anything like that. It's just, what is like the worst case scenario is always a good question to be asking. But this correction could take many different forms and might end up not being all that bad. Well, that's obviously a perspective thing. Like for some YouTube commenters, I mean, even going fucking $10 down is quite bad. This is a very, very bad thing to be happening. But I think for more reasonable people, it would be. It wouldn't be all that concerning. Anyways, yes, I did want to also point out while we are here that the 5 exponential moving average strategy obviously has not fired off to the upside recently. It is still riding that 5 exponential to the downside. In fact, I've even gone ahead and made a strategy that that does a downside trade for that. There are other indications on top of it because it's not actually as good outside of the box, obviously with an asset that typically goes to the upside, but in this case, when we do kind of dial it in, we actually did have a pretty nice entry right here, which was just under $63,000, which was about last Monday, I believe. And this one's obviously still riding this trade in a short to the downside. I haven't talked too much about this. I only brought it up, I believe, once or twice last, or maybe 2 weeks ago. Yeah, when this happened over here. But in this case, this one's actually still open and still trending as far as as far as we can see. So as long as it is riding below that red 5 exponential on the daily time frame, which is currently at 59,160, that trade is going to be open. And I mean, this is so far from open to current about 7.5% move, so it's not anything super crazy. It looks like a lot of the board just because we're not really zoomed out here, but yeah. Anyways, you can see that this strategy actually has been kind of chewing its teeth right there. Had a nice big loss recently too. Let's actually see what is the average return for these winning trades. Yeah, not anything super super interesting, especially for a short trade, but it is just under 10%. The average losing trade just under 4% actually. So going back into it, I mean we might have already even seen this move right here. It's very possible, but technically speaking, the closing condition for this would be closing back above the 5 exponential. And again, this is this is using the tool from this service over here, the Krown Quant automation. We provide all these templates and stuff that if you want to use that and iterate off of that, that's fine. But at the end of the day, it's more fun to kind of play with on your own and find your own your own strategies and edges, which you can obviously base off of what of what we do as well. It's completely fine. Anyways, yes, so we've spoken about all of that. We've spoken about current downside and when to kind of expect it to perhaps end, as well as what price. But let's now talk about worst case scenario. So let's say that this is this is truly bad. The lines have been broken. Okay, the lines have been broken. Consequences will never be the same, and Bitcoin's going fucking down. Well, if it is going to truly have like a worst case scenario is always 0, obviously, but a very, very low probability. What's probably more reasonable is to bring this chart back up over here, the Bitcoin production cost chart, and go to the basement lower channel of this, which has accurately predicted like the worst case scenario in pretty much all instances. Sometimes there's a small deviation there. It does happen, but very minor. I mean, in this case, like if you were looking at this in March of 2020 during the Rona dump, and you saw it come all the way down to the bottom end right here and just briefly pierce through the bottom, is it wrecked? It's like, if it's not perfect, it sucks. No, obviously that would have been a phenomenal long-term buy. In this case, the basement price over here, if you can see, there we go, is 43,600 basically. So, if Bitcoin were to have like a quick wick to the downside, I don't know, maybe World War III begins, who the fuck knows what could happen. That would, at least in my opinion, probably be a pretty damn good area. I suspect that does line up with some major fibs as well. In fact, let's just look at it right here. Like I can't look at it on line chart. I don't know why, it just doesn't make sense in my brain, but let's see from low to high. You got the 50% retracement right around 45,000. You got the 618 at $38,000. Somewhere between there, we could be completely fine. Even if we take it from last summer, you got the 618 at 43. So somewhere around there does make a lot of sense. Technically speaking, if Bitcoin were to get down around there, I'd say that that's probably a good do. But of course, if I am going to be even entertaining the possibility of that, one, again, I would expect this move to start to occur this first half of September, basically, and probably we'd even see the initial indication over here with the weekly time frame closing below that last low from late July to ignite this one off. And that last low from July is 58,150. Bitcoin now trading about $50 above that number. So, if Bitcoin does close lower than that, and especially significantly lower than that in the next 16 hours, 36 minutes and 15 seconds and counting, well, weekly trend is not going to be your friend if you want to be bullish, at least. There is that, of course. So yeah, this is this September, obviously not necessarily what I was looking for, but at the end of the day, the charts are what the charts are, and you're going to see me kind of switch around here to being certainly more defensive in the short term. Does that mean it's going to be right? Doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be 100% right, but more often than not, we do have these indications which give us an edge, and that's what we go off, or at least that's what I go off of if you're looking at the content on this channel right here. So that's going to do it for today's video. A little bit on the longer side for today, but again, it is a monthly update, and I did want to take a little bit more time for this one, even though there's still a very, this market is still very, very quiet right now. So it is what it is. But for the people who are still watching, I just want to make sure that I continue to update my thoughts on this and how things kind of evolve, because realistically, for the last 5 months, we have not seen anything of significant interest on a closing basis. If we were to, put on a line chart, I mean, nothing really significant has happened, but it does seem like this like period of boredom is very likely to end very, very soon. So, could it look like a quick wick to the downside and then pop back on up? Sure. Yeah. I mean, that's definitely possible, but, let's see what this first half of September brings, because that is going to be sort of the danger timing, if you will. And I'll leave it on that note. Again, I should remind myself to remind you that, our sale goes on for the next week with the code BDAY in all capitals, just like that. And yeah, everything's 20% off except for the Krown Quant automation, which is 80% off for the first month. And we'll end it on that note. As always, wish you the best. Take care, much love, and see you hopefully next time.